Joining us is Dr. Indira Rampersad, Head of Political Science Department and International Relations at the University of West Indies, St. Augustine. A pleasant good evening to you, Dr. Rampersad.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Well, a lot better hearing your voice. I'm glad to know that we have an expert with us that's going to enlighten us and give us some clarity as what has been developing for the past 24 hours. Apparently, the Venezuelan president makes Essequibo a new state, and he sets up a temporary government for the district and gives mining and oil companies in the area 3 months to leave. He also instructs the state company, PDVSA, to immediately start granting concessions for oil, gas, and minerals. I mean, this is moving at quite a pace. And if you can, of course, shed some light and some of our concerns can be answered, we really appreciate that.
Okay, so my motto is all politics are domestic. There is a national election in 2024 in Venezuela, a general election, and Mr. Maduro, we might want to say Mad Maduro, but there is method in the madness. Mr. Maduro is hoping that he is going to, what they call rally around the flag. So that is what he's doing, trying to get his population, which is clearly unhappy with him, and I'm talking about the majority of the population. Many of them have left, but there are still a lot of disgruntled Venezuelans who couldn't leave for one reason or the other, and they are not going to support him in the elections. There are a few elitists who will, and the military, of course, which he has under his control. But this is all about a massive distraction from his gross mismanagement of the Venezuelan economy. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. And, some may argue that there is no reason for Venezuela to want to annex the Essequibo region for oil reserves, but certainly not for oil and gas. Some others argue that the oil reserves in Guyana is richer, easier to refine, sweeter, as they say, and that therefore Venezuela want to get its hands on that. There may be some economic motives, but I think that the grand strategy is political. He is grossly unpopular, highly unpopular in Venezuela. As we know, the mass emigration out of Venezuela in recent times, many of which have come to Trinidad. I think we have more than 100,000 here in Trinidad and Tobago. So this is just one country they've gone to. They've been going to other Latin American countries. They've been braving the jungles to go to North America, through Mexico and El Salvador. So this is like I said, it's really what we will call a confluence of domestic and international politics, intermystic politics.
Yeah, but Dr. Rampersad, of course, geopolitics is so technical and very, very sensitive. There are certain areas, of course, that one has to understand when it comes to strong diplomacy and passive diplomacy based on who you're dealing with. When you talk about unpopular, more than 95% of the voters that took place, that participated in last Sunday's referendum, only 2 million people voted. And that make up roughly 10% of the eligible voters. Is that basically the people in Venezuela say, listen, we really are not interested in this. We're trying to simply live on a daily basis, keep our head above water, and we really and truly don't believe that this is a priority?
Well, two things. Many are not interested because, as the ratings go, populations and the census and the surveys will show this. Populations are not generally interested in foreign policy. This is foreign policy. Guyana is remote to them. They're more concerned about getting food on the table because many of them are hungry and starving. That's one. So the other aspect of this is disinterest is one. The other aspect is that many of them probably did not support the move. Many of them don't see why, big Venezuela, 25 million people or thereabouts. Many have left, but, they still have sizable amount. Guyana, 800,000. Vast expanse of land in Guyana, empty expanse of land, rich in resources. So Venezuela would have had its eye there. So there's that economic dimension. There's also a strategic and military dimension to this. Venezuela can afford to flex its muscle because it has the support of some international actors who have been supplying Venezuela with arms and ammunition for a long time. And this is Maduro, even Chavez. And these are all allies, not new ones. Those are Russia, who invaded Ukraine. So, you know, they have a similar kind of proclivity to invade. They like this invasion thing because it's macho, it's prestige. The other is Iran, which is a nuclear power, as we know. And the other is China, which has the largest military force in the world. Now, Venezuela's military, Guyana's military, in fact, is no match for Venezuela either. Venezuela has a very powerful military as well, aided and abetted by these three allies who have huge militaries. Russia also, during the Cold War, had you know, massive stockpiles of military weapons. The United States, however, and this is something we would want to talk about, we cannot have this discourse without looking at the role of the United States.
Yeah, and of course, we're talking about as well, in the last 24 hours, a new Venezuelan map has been presented by the Venezuelan president, showing, of course, where these areas have now been annexed and their total control, even to the point of setting up a commission, a governor, to govern that area. How does America fit into this equation? I mean, a lot seems to be at stake here. Okay, so first of all, Washington has been definitely silent on this matter. I was in a forum with a Washington-based Council for Strategic Affairs on Saturday. I spoke on the role of KCOM, which I can also talk about here. And what they were saying also is that they're surprised by the deafening silence of the United States, Washington, D.C. Some of them were living in Washington, D.C. So, you know, there are multiple dimensions to this. This is what you would call a multi-level game. One would hope that this is not Sleepy Joe or Biden time, because Biden doesn't have time to bide. There was enough time for the United States to have established some military base or military setup to protect its interests. And this would be the core reason if the United States step into the fray. Now, the U.S. does not like leftist regimes expanding into the region, and that goes back way to Monroe Doctrine when, to ward off communist elements in the region. Right. This goes back way to American designs in the Caribbean and Latin America, South America in this case. So the United States have huge interests in Guyana because, as we know, United States companies like ExxonMobil has been drilling, producing oil in Guyana. The primary producer is Exxon, which is a United States-based multinational corporation. The profits are leaking back to the United States. This is the core, the center here. So that is the United States' interest. That's why I wondered why they haven't taken a more proactive stance. To date, knowing very well that Maduro had designs on that Essequibo region where they are also drilling. There is also this peculiar development in recent times where the United States lifted sanctions from Venezuela very recently. And why? Because the crisis in the Middle East, the Israel-Palestine conflict, and the Russian-Ukraine war has disrupted the supplies of oil and gas to the U.S., which is the largest consumer of energy in the world, by the way. And so the United States needed some quick, ready, probably cheaper supplies. As we know, Venezuela traded, their currency is Bolivares, so I'm sure the oil is cheaper. And they lifted those sanctions, again, for their own interests. But the United States is not really prepared, I don't think, to have these leftist regions. They never did during the Cold War, after the Cold War, before the Cold War. They never did have that, would tolerate leftist regimes, whether it was Cuba, whether it was Nicaragua, whether it was El Salvador, whether it was Grenada, or whether it was Guyana under Jagan in the earlys. And I want to agree with you as far as the deafening silence and ask this question. Is it that, are we seeing some sort of a shift, a geopolitical paradigm shift that is taking place globally, where some people are saying, listen, I am confident, I am driven, I am engineered to the fact that I can get away with this because Washington is asleep, the leaders there are asleep, and this is the prime time to make my move?
Yes, because Maduro's been saying this, I believe, if it's not September, it's October. So it's a while now, 2 months at least. And we saw no overtures. I heard that they were going to set up a military base, but that could have been rumors in Guyana. I don't know, but their oil interests, certainly Exxon and those honchos there are going to be in the case of the government. Now, the question is, whose allegiance do they have, whether it's Republican or whether it's Democrat, and if this is why Biden is not acting, or maybe Sleepy Joe is just sleeping. One doesn't know. But it is strange, and that this has actually happened because they've declared war. Once they are issuing license for their companies to go ahead, they've declared war. Venezuela's declared war. So where is the United States? Where is Great Britain? Where is the European Union? Where are the Western powers who usually support the United States? And they all had a say in Russia, Ukraine as well. But then there is the other dimension of the American population. There is an election also in the United States in 2024. And Americans, not many of the people on the ground have been in support of America going to war for other people. Since Vietnam, they learned a very, very serious lesson of many sons and daughters of the U.S. Dying in that war. So they're like, prefer the isolationist policy of the United States. I'm talking about the American public. So they're also being very careful. I think the U.S. government is being careful. Given this impending elections, with Sleepy Joe, we don't know how he's going to rate, and we might see the return of Donald Trump in that competition as well in 2024.
And I guess that will make things different as far as the whole equation will turn around. But
because Trump is far right, he's not going to put up with Venezuela at all.
Exactly. And as you made it quite clear, you said this is basically declaring war because, we're talking about setting up a temporary government, giving mining and oil companies 3 months in the area to leave, and compounded with the fact is telling the state company to immediately start granting concessions for oil, gas, and minerals, as well as a new map for the area. Then one has to ask, where does Trinidad and Tobago fit into this equation? What do we do, and how do we deal with such a thing that is going to be right there in our backyard?
We are in the middle of the morass. And that is because many Caribbean islands, Trinidad and Tobago included, have always sort of leaned leftwards, So we have a kind of Fabian socialist ideology, ostentatious, it's more ostentatious than real. But we tend to lean leftward. We tend to support lefties, not necessarily communists, but we are left-leaning rather than right-leaning. And our Prime Minister is currently between a rock and a hard place, he and his Minister of Energy, because they've been very, very close to Venezuela. We saw Delcy Rodriguez coming here in the middle of COVID, okay? In the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, she's here. Nobody knows for what, when everybody else locked down. And these dragon deals being signed, the dragon field deals. And so they are worried as to what is going to happen to that. But he came out and said he's supporting Guyana.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, so Trinidad and Tobago is in a very precarious situation because the Prime Minister is saying he's supporting Guyana because Guyana is a member of KCOM, and so is Trinidad. Now, Venezuela, by the way, is an observer member of KCOM, and they had all committed, including Venezuela, to a zone of peace, a region of peace, so that is in a way a breach of that commitment, but it's not law. It's not, just soft law, as you would say. Yeah. But just a statement.
And as far as those folks who are still talking about conversation, there needs to be dialogue, some sort of diplomacy that needs to be dealt with this matter. Do you believe that horse has bolted out of the stable? It's far gone now?
No. I don't think it's even started. So I think what you do, you start with negotiations. And this is alternative dispute resolution. You start with negotiations. And I think what would work here, not mediation, because mediation is win-win. And it could lead to them having to divide that Essequibo region in half and each getting a piece of the pie. So I would say good offices. So we would want some neutral third party. Maybe the honchos at the University of the West Indies Vice Chancellor, going using their good offices because they tend to be more objective, and using their good offices to try to put some sense into Venezuela, which is basically to honor the commitment of that zone of peace.
Yeah, as far as what is taking place. So hopefully it's not too late that there can still be some sort of dialogue or conversation on the matter.
Yes, and I'm hoping so. Now, they've declared war, but you see, all of these talks, I think, should have happened before, because we knew what he was going to do. We knew about this referendum. I also knew he was going to claim victory in the referendum. Right? There's no way the way he phrased those questions. They were leading questions. There's only one way they could.
I think history has taught us, as far as the lack of transparency in any election in Venezuela is something that one has to question. So again, this really and truly came as no surprise, having this referendum and then having the results the way that it turned out. But now that we're in this situation, I do hope that there could be some dialogue still. I hope that Maduro and his team is willing to sit down and have some dialogue, because if not, then what are we looking at as far as short-term or even long-term?
We're looking at a world war.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. We're looking at great powers jumping into the fray over this little island and this little region in a little, not island, Guyana is not an island, but a little region in a small Caribbean state, in a small South American state.
And as far as CARICOM, because many people have weighed in on saying that CARICOM is nothing more than a talk shop. It has not evolved dealing with as far as many of these global matters and these serious issues. What should CARICOM be doing right now as these things are unfolding?
Yes, CARICOM has issued 3 statements, and basically they're all saying that Venezuela should abide by the rules of the ICJ ruling, and that Guyana should Venezuela should honor this whole notion of the zone of peace. So that's CARICOM's position, but CARICOM is a 15-member state territory. And CARICOM doesn't have a big military. CARICOM can only talk, as do Irfan Ali. I heard him issuing a very brave statement today. But it's rhetoric, when it comes to force and military force, it's a different thing.
Yeah, they've already started some military tactical exercises across the region. So that alone is going to say, listen, we mean business. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Well, heaven forbid that this is the precursor to a world war, because we will be all caught with it, all of us in the Caribbean. Guyana is right there. We're closest, we're closest to Venezuela, 7 miles from the southwestern peninsula. And Guyana is our neighbor, not only our neighbor, but our CARICOM friend and ally. We don't want to see anything happen there. For the first time, they were one of the second poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere, and now perhaps the richest because of their oil. Venezuela is eyeing that, but Venezuela also has, political motives in light of the elections next year. So I think we can only pray.
Yeah. I guess so. And let's see what happens, how it unfolds, and hopefully good sense will prevail in all of this. I want to thank you so much for taking time out this evening to link with us. It's been a pleasure, very insightful, and we will be checking in with you periodically. Best of luck to you and your entire team.
Thank you for having me. I'm most welcome.
Appreciate it.
Bye.